Best of r/malicious compliance episode 110. Subscribe for Reddit videos daily. So, about 2 months ago, my neighbor moved out. Now we weren't hangout level friends, but we were cordial with each other. We had an agreement that if the other wasn't home when a package came, we'd go grab it and just give it to each other when they got home, as my neighborhood is littered with porch pirates. So, a month ago, new neighbor moves in. He has a package arrive. He's not home. I grab the package, figuring I'd try and make the same arrangement with him. An hour later or so, he pulls in his driveway, and I come out to meet him with his package. I hand him the package, and I give him the rundown about package thieves in the area. He loses his shit and tells me that I don't need your fucking help, mind your own business, leave me the fuck alone, and storms off into his house. Okay, cool. Fast forward to yesterday. I'm outside doing honeydews, flowers, yard, blah blah. Neighbor isn't home. Amazon guy comes and drops off a package on dude's doorstep. Malicious compliance. Not 5 minutes after the Amazon guy leaves, here comes a porch pirate, grabs the package, and just starts casually walking back to the sidewalk. Just as the thief makes the sidewalk, the douche pulls into his driveway. Thief takes off running. He gets out of his car and starts screaming at me. I told him, "Nah dude, I believe you told me you didn't need my help and to mind my own business, so that's what I did." Guy gets all pissed and runs into his house. You could hear him breaking shit. Hilarious. Edit. Yeah, I can see your points about maybe I should have spoke to him first. I forgot to put in the post that when I did grab his delivery, that I had just chased a thief off. When I posted this, I had just gotten off a 16-hour shift at the prison I work at, and was dead-ass tired. Edit. He knocked on my door late yesterday evening and apologized for acting the way he did. We shook hands. Edit. Holy crap. I thought this was just gonna get buried. Thank you. Next. So this is just me venting about something that happened to me a few years ago while having unnaturally colored hair. Still do BTW. It currently looks just like my Reddit avatar ATM. I could go on and on about how it sucks that companies won't hire you just because you have unnaturally colored hair. It doesn't matter how good your resume is. But that's a story for another day. Right now I'm going with the worst instance of this being an issue with an employer I had. When I was brought in for an interview for a hardware store, I had most of the front of my hair dyed a bright lilac color. The interview went smoothly and the main boss of the place even complimented my hair. They went so far as to ask if I dye it often. To which I said yes. I change it every few months and was planning on going with a pink color next month for spring. So they were fully aware of the fact that I had no intentions of changing it to a natural color before hiring me. I was brought onto the team and put into the garden department, and I was the only one on staff that had unnaturally colored hair. I, of course, would change the color every few months and life went on. I got nothing but compliments from customers and staff alike. I worked there for about a year with no issue, though a few other staff members over that year offhandedly told me that other employees quit prior to my employment because of the hair policy the store had. I was confused by this since nobody had said anything to me when I was hired nor in the almost year I worked there, so I shrugged it off. That is until I was brought into the boss's area and he asked me why my hair was dyed blue, as it was against store dress code and I needed to have it changed by my next shift. Which again, this is the guy who hired me, with purple hair. I was so dumbfounded that I even pointed that out to him. He kinda sputtered and said that there was a change in policy and stated that it needed to be changed by tomorrow. What had made me mad about this was that I had just purchased my next dye kit as the blue color was finally starting to show signs of fading. I asked if I could have more time as it would take a while to bleach the color out of my hair safely without damaging it. His solution: dye my hair whole head black. Now, let's just say I have many problems with that. I spent years and quite a bit of money safely bleaching my hair in the front to be able to color it whatever I like. Especially since my natural color is a dark auburn and it is almost impossible for any dye to take to it, as well as to bleach it white enough to take color. It took me forever and quite a few salon visits to make it this way in the first place. So half of my hair was bright blue, and half of it was a dark purplish red. For anybody who knows about coloring hair, reds and blues are the two worst colors to get out of hair, and just dyeing over it won't exactly work. Trust me, I've tried to do similar methods on coloring mistakes. Dyeing over bright neon colors with a darker color won't always work. If the dye doesn't take, it can just fade after a few washes and reveal the neon color underneath. Least that's what has happened to me quite a few times. Plus one day I wanted to dye my whole head because I hate dark colors for my hair. Why else would I color it such bright pretty colors in the first place? So, I politely mentioned that it would just fade and be blue/red again after a few weeks if I did what he was asking. He scoffed, suggested dyeing it over it a couple more times, and finally just said to fix it as soon as possible. Which I did. I turned my hair silver over the course of a week. I used as much color remover and bleach as I could, safely of course, and did many oil and repair treatments on my hair in between. He couldn't do jack shit cause then the older staff would also have to get in trouble for having silver/white hair. I ended up quitting a month later though as a better job came up. TLDR, boss hired me onto job with bright colored hair. Year later same boss tries to get me in trouble for said colored hair. Dye hair silver so boss wouldn't be mad anymore. Thank you. Next. This may be borderline malicious compliance but it kind of fits. The early 90s I worked for a 200 employee manufacturer. Nearly every day we'd get 100-200 different parts as incoming receiving. This predates barcoding so the receiving clerk manually logged each item sequentially on a form. The form looked like a shopping list, QTY then one item per line going down the page. The receiver complained a lot about this as it would take most of the day to do. Originally he had a helper but they quit and the spot was not refilled. With a helper it went fast, one checking and one logging. He had other responsibilities when he had a helper but those were taken away when the helper quit. That created some major butthurt as he became just the receiving guy. He may have been doing some incoming QC prior. He'd evolved into complaining about this anytime you spoke with him. People began to avoid him or minimize contact with him because this was all he would talk about. He went from always being with a group at lunch to sitting in his car eating by himself. This went on for a long time and then he dropped it and was sort of back to the way he was before. And then one day he was fired and marched out of the building. He'd been hiding messages in the receiving log. The first letter of each item when they were all lined up would spell it out. He didn't line the words exactly up but staggered them so it wasn't easy to see. It was only by bad luck it got noticed. I found out later from a mutual friend he'd even hold back receiving some items so he could use that item's first letter on another log. He apparently planned his weekly message out, and this had gone on for months, close to a year. The majority of his screeds were centered on 3 people in management. The one that got him sacked was Marie has a smeg mouth. Paraphrased but close. Thank you. Next. My mom was a salmon till I, the youngest of the brood, was old enough to go to school. Once I was enrolled, mom rejoined the workforce. As the years went by, her savings grew until she had enough cash on hand to buy her dream car. Before going to the dealership, she researched what was a reasonable price for the vehicle and the add-ons she wanted. Armed with this information, she went to the dealership. I'm guessing all the salesman saw was a woman who should have been barefoot, pregnant, and making my dad a sandwich. He insisted that the sticker price was fixed, and that she, as a woman, shouldn't try to haggle anyways because women don't know how to do that. When that didn't deter her, he started to mock her by saying she probably couldn't afford a new car. In retrospect, I think my mom's age, skin color, and immigration status explains why she didn't immediately give him the 2-finger salute and leave. She and my dad spent their lifetimes fighting against racism and discrimination. To her, this was just another day. Finally, the salesman laughed in her face and said, if you really do have the cash to buy a car, why don't you go to competitor dealership? Maybe they'll haggle with you. The make and model at this dealership had been my mom's first choice. She had an equally good second choice that was a different make and model, and was sold by the aforementioned competitor. A few days later, she drove into the lot in her new car from the competitor. She asked to speak with the salesman who insulted her, waved at her new luxury vehicle, and cheerfully said, the commission could have been yours. I guess I was able to afford a new car after all. She said he still hadn't picked up his jaw as she drove off. Thank you. Next. Reading an excellent post about clearing out a play center reminded me of this little gem. Nowhere near as big, maybe petty, but we did as asked. We moved out of an office, so got the usual cleanup request. All good. Moved out but left cabling. The network cables were previous and we added a fiber cable from basement to 18th floor past a bank on the ground floor. Much harder to organize. Given the ISP always wants fiber now and in Australia there are very few carriers, it was an asset. Roll on to inspection and we face the cabling bill. Much disagreement about blue cables. We had to contact the previous tenants in the end and they gave evidence that we inherited the rack and cabling. The fiber? Yep, we can fix that. We got some snips and cut it up inside the wall. Fully useless to anyone going forward, and so a new cable run cost that no doubt will be discounted off the next rental as CBD office space really needs internet. Thank you. Next. Cross post from r/internet led parents. What seems like a lifetime ago, when I was 18, I coached indoor soccer at the local YMCA. It was a co-ed league and the ages were 6-8 if memory serves me well. My team comprised of varying degrees of skill and interest. One of the rules was that there was free substitution in a game. That just means that you can pull kids in and out of the game when there is action going on. I also tried to have the kids play equal amounts of time. Now onto the story. We were maybe halfway through our season and by this time I had gotten to know the kids I coached pretty well. Most of the kids I would leave in for about 3 minutes. One boy and one girl I would leave on a little more because they were pretty good. Then there was Sam. I would only leave him in for at the most 90 seconds, usually closer to 75 seconds. Despite this, over the course of a game, he played almost as much as everyone else. The difference was negligible. We are still in the first half and I pull him out like normal. Then I hear some lady scream, "Let my boy play, stop taking him out." I knew the rules and I am talking to the sports director. I guess that is her equivalent to talking to the manager. I try to ignore her and keep coaching but her yelling never ceases. Other parents are looking but not saying anything yet. This has gone on for about 5 minutes and I can't take it no more. This shrill entitled mom has broken me. Fine, I'll leave him in longer, I yell. Leave him in I did. Almost as if on cue at just past 90 seconds Sam loses interest in the game and starts chasing an imaginary tail. At 100 seconds he continues chasing his tail and barks. At about 2 minutes he pulls his shirt over his head and plays his belly like drums. Then I hear "Take him out. Take him out." I looked down the line and made eye contact with her and smiled. And I took him out. It was a short but sweet encounter. The kid just had the attention span of a goldfish. Thank you. Next. As a store person at a major milling operation, 200 plus personnel, I drive a forklift around the site to deliver supplies to the various departments. Mine is a 2.5 ton, tiny, model, whereas the others on site, about 16 in total, range from 4-16 ton. Since they're so large compared to mine, and being aware that they get into a zone and don't notice my presence straight away, I always keep a safe distance and sound my horn if I can't to make them aware that I'm coming through. Last week, a supervisor complained that I wasn't announcing my presence over the radio. When I made inquiries about this to a more senior person, he told me that although it's a forklift operating in a forklift operating area, it's not a production forklift, and hence every time it moves throughout the mill its presence is required to be announced over the radio. In spite of me pointing out that I drive the forklift a lot more than he realized, and that I would be taking up a lot of radio space, he stressed that that's the rule and I had to conform. Yesterday, I was told to stop calling up every time I drive the forklift. Turns out people are only aware of their own surroundings, and have no idea that other people continue working once they are out of sight. Go figure.